Hello, everyone, and welcome to Great Conversations that Make a Difference in Improving Accessibility to Improve Student Success. I'm your host, Brian Enfinger, Director of Curriculum, Sanford College of Education at National University. We have some great topics to discuss today and some great panelists to lead the discussion. We will start off with defining accessibility, then turn to designing for inclusivity and engagement. And of course, we don't leave out universal design for learning when talking about these topics. Finally, we'll look at what the future holds. As mentioned, we have some great panelists here today. Dr. Christine Storms, Dr. Teresa Ennis, Dr. Yulia Waters, Dr. Shelley Reese, all curriculum directors from their respective schools. And we have a special guest, Amber Bagwell, Associate Director of our Student Accessibility Services. Here's what we hope to achieve in our discussion today. Ideas and concepts that we can utilize to increase engagement. Ideas and concepts on the horizon that we can plan to implement soon. Future considerations that could increase engagement, success, and persistence. Well, let's get right to it. First, let's talk about accessibility. Christine, can you start us off by explaining accessibility and who benefits from accessible courses?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. What is accessibility? Accessibility is the design of products, services, and environments to be usable by students with disabilities. The concept of accessible design and practice ensures both direct access and indirect access, meaning compatibility with a person's abilities, capabilities, and any assistive technology. Today, more than 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability. These are all things that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at designing courses. According to the CDC, in 2024, the percentage of adults with disabilities are as follows. Almost 14% with cognition, 12.2% mobility, almost 8% independent living, 6% hearing, over 5.5% vision, and 3.6% self-care. These were self-disclosed disabilities, again, according to the CDC. So let's take a look at what we can do and what we can keep in mind when designing or revising a course or a program. So for students who are colorblind or have epilepsy, dyslexia, or ADHD, use a screen reader, have some physical disabilities, or speak English as a second language, we want to make sure that we're using clear writing, that we're avoiding figurative language, that we're using adequate white space, we have proper readability, and provide transcripts and recordings of videos and live sessions. We also want to make sure that anything that students are doing using a mouse or a keyboard are compatible with those students with physical disabilities. Other accessibility considerations are going to include that physical accessibility that I just mentioned, digital accessibility, the universal design for learning, which we will discuss a little bit later, and those individual accommodations that we're going to have to make for students on IEPs that have those disabilities, along with training and support for faculty and staff, complete awareness, and legal obligations such as the Americans for Disabilities Act.
Those are great points, Christine, and a lot to unpack here. Now let's see how that plays out in a practical sense. Amber, can you give us some insight into how we interact with students at National University and what services do we provide?
Absolutely. As Brian noted, I'm Amber and I oversee the Student Accessibility Services Department at National University. We also call ourselves SAS. I oversee 8 full-time and 3 part-time individuals who are dedicated to accessibility and each play a unique part in ensuring accessibility in the student experience at NU. As we have this conversation, it's important to note that lack of self-reporting remains a problem across higher education, with studies finding that only 35% of students with disabilities self-disclose to campus services. We see this reflected in our own data at NU. Although 25% identify as disabled, only 2% of NU students apply for and receive individual accommodations. To mitigate this disparity, we consider accessibility globally well beyond minimal compliance. SAS have partnered with our Learning and Experience Design team to develop an accessibility checklist This ensures that accessibility compliance is being implemented from the creation of the course shell by our course designers. To assist in accessibility beyond the course shell design, the SAS team supports students not only with academic accommodations, but throughout their academic journey as they meet with other departments. For instructional assistance, we consider the student's presenting diagnosis, their program of choice, and their selected modality, as NU offers two types of course modalities, synchronous and asynchronous. Furthermore, SAS employs an assistive technology coordinator who remediates instructional material to ensure it is accessible to screen readers and other assistive technology. For larger institutional support of accessibility, we partner with an external contractor to proactively review courses for our deaf and hard of hearing students, as well as our visually impaired students. If any issues are identified, we then partner with our learning experience team to have the courses updated prior to the student beginning the course. Additionally, we provide communication access for the student journey outside of the classroom, from their first meeting with enrollment to their commencement experience. Finally, SAS partners with departments throughout the university to provide regular disability etiquette training to ensure students, regardless of diagnosis, are provided an outstanding and accessible student experience. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Amber. All this is very interesting, and we can see that the need is relevant to student success. Now let's turn our attention to how designing accessible courses can benefit all students by increasing engagement. Yulia, can you talk a little bit about UDL and why do we care about making courses engaging?
Of course. So the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines is a framework for teaching and learning that considers the needs of all people based on scientific insights about how humans learn. UDL minimizes barriers and maximizes learning for students. We know that our students are diverse. Each learner brings their own background, needs, strengths, and interests. And the way that they learn and demonstrate their learning also varies greatly, so our curriculum needs to be designed with flexibility to meet the needs of all learners from the outset. Instead of thinking what the average student needs, when you design for students on the margins, you end up meeting the needs of all students. For example, if you see the closed captions on a webinar, you might think about how captions can support viewers who are deaf or hard of hearing, but they also may be useful for viewers who are learning English, or people at the gym, or those who are watching when others need quiet. So for example, like someone in the same room who is trying to study or work or sleep. UDL has several principles. One is engagement. This is the first principle of the UDL. This means targeting the affective networks of the brain, the why of learning. The goal is to end up with expert learners who are purposeful and motivated. We'll discuss 3 guidelines and their corresponding checkpoints with an example from a grant writing course. The first point is to provide options for recruiting interest. Spark excitement and curiosity for learning. Because it is natural for learners to have different interests, it's important for the course content to provide numerous alternatives that will engage learners' cognition. For example, in the introduction of the grant writing course, we include a welcome paragraph touching on the relevance of the course to future applications in the field, demonstrating how students will be able to make the content useful for their interests now and in the future in a variety of different ways. In one of the assignments, we have an example of individual choice and autonomy by inviting students to schedule a face-to-face meeting with a professor. Another aspect of engagement is providing options for sustaining effort and persistence. To be successful in the coursework, sustained effort and attentions are generally required. However, ability to regulate this varies among students. These guidelines are intended to help students to bolster the self-regulation skills so that they can keep putting the effort throughout the course. For example, in the introduction to the course, we highlight the silence of goals and objectives of the course. There is a second checkpoint where we vary demands and resources to optimize challenges. We provide a range of possible resources that might be included, and we also have some optional resources. Assignment types are also varied to respond to the different range of demands. We also can foster collaboration and community, which might be difficult, for example, in an online course, but some of our courses incorporate discussions between the instructors and students, among students, offering opportunities for collaboration. Increasing mastery-oriented feedback is another type of feedback that guides learners towards mastery rather than fixed notion of performance. For example, in their final assignment, students could be reminded to review the previous feedback from their instructor, specifically from the previous weeks, and integrate it in their final grant application assignment. Another aspect of engagement is self-regulation. The ability to self-regulate is a critical aspect of human development. Addressing self-regulation outright in the context of a learning environment helps students to consider how they may best modulate their emotional reactions and states in order to be more effective in coping as they engage in their coursework. For example, again, in the introduction of the course, we set the level setting of idea to promote expectations and beliefs that optimize motivation. The first lesson continues on the theme that with the entire paragraph dedicated to normalize worry and doubt related to the grant writing and provide guidance on coping skills and strategies. In addition, the first assignment I titled Examine Worries, Fears, and Curiosities about the grant writing process has students engaging in self-assessment and reflection head-on from the start of the course. Another aspect of UDL is representation. It invites us to provide multiple means of representation while designing curriculum. We attend to the perception. So, for example, the resource section is quite varied, including online articles, textbook chapters, and videos. We offer different ways of customizing information. Students are given instructions on how to submit their assignments in different contexts. We clarify vocabulary and symbols. We clarify syntax and structure. And we support decoding of text, mathematical notation, and symbols. One example in the grant writing course would be to acknowledge the specialized vocabulary that one needs to master this course. In the second week of the course, students are also prompted to create a grant writing dictionary. Another aspect of representation is to activate or supply background knowledge. Resources are provided in the early assignments, help students to create subsequent assignment. So, for example, resources in week 5, review sample letter of inquiry and worksheet letter of inquiry questionnaire build on each other. We also highlight patterns, critical features, big ideas, and relationships, and including figures can often help with that task. We guide information processing and visualization and maximize transfer and generalizations. Assignments often build on each other, facilitating the transfer of knowledge. For example, the week 4 assignment will be the basis for the assignments in week 8, 9, or 10, or 11. That's all I have for today for the UDL.
Okay, thanks, Julia. We go back to engagement and accessibility, and I know you touched on these things during your definition of UDL. Do you want to cover some of these things again?
I think we covered them when I was providing examples of the UDL. So I think we can move forward with the next presenter.
Okay. Well, we have interactive activities, real world connections, student input, and positive learning environments that we can all create these scenarios when we design our courses. So thank you, Yulia. There's a lot to think about when we start designing our courses. I'm so glad that we have universal design for learning as a guide. Before we leave today, what do we see in the future as being the next big thing for designing for accessibility? Shelley, would you like to start us off?
I would, thanks. So I think we all know it's probably AI. We are seeing that already. it seems clear that AI is going to continue to be an important accessibility vehicle for students and for designers. The kinds of AI programs that we have currently for student users, we can see its usefulness in many of these categories that you see listed here. The video captioning, it can generate automatic video captioning that Yulia mentioned. It can do lip reading. It can create robust image descriptions, alt text for images. One of the most exciting things that's going on right now is a lot of work in speech, um, including real language translation, so that allows for real-time communication between students that speak different languages as well as students with speech impediments. So if you think about how isolating disability can be in the education space, you can really see how important these developments are going to be for success and retention and persistence for students who can get frustrated with the isolating experience of education. So this is one of the things that's most exciting to me. For designers, we're seeing a lot of really fascinating programs come about. Anthology Ally is one that is embedded within D2L. A lot of the learning management systems like D2L now offer embedded accessibility checkers for designers. They can generate updated versions of the course that you create for you, or they can just give you what you can see here. This is a screenshot from Yuja that will give you an accessibility report and point out the exact places where accessibility might be an issue. Here you can see that the colors in this image are flagged as possibly being not in contrast enough for people with low vision to make out the details. So it will flag what it considers possible issues for accessibility, and it will also generate a a different version for you that you can alter or choose to use as seems appropriate for you. So yeah, it seems clear that this is only going to continue and only going to get better.
All right. Well, thank you, Shelley. That was very informative about what we might be able to see with AI in the future. Well, that's about all the time we have today. I would like to thank all the panelists for a great discussion, and I hope everyone has been able to take away a few nuggets to steer their own improvement of accessibility to improve student success. Thanks for attending, and goodbye, everyone.